Hello everyone, welcome back to another video explanation by yours truly. So in this case, we're going to tackle our first topic of the semester, and we're talking about future perfect simple. Okay, so this is going to be a two-part explanation, but this first part we're only going to focus on future perfect simple. Remember, it is very important for you guys to pay a lot of attention, or as much as you possibly can, to this explanation, and then bring all your questions to our class. Okay? So, without any further ado, let's get started with the explanation. So, the first thing we have to ask ourselves when we want to talk about any grammar topic is what do we use it for? Okay? So, analyze and try and remember past perfect and future perfect. Past perfect and present perfect? What did you use those for? Right? So, take a second, analyze, and then here we go. We use it for actions finished in the future. Okay. So you might remember that we use past perfect to talk about an action that was finished before another action in the past. But in this case, we're talking about an action that finished before another action in the future. Okay. So here's a little bit more of an explanation here. So we use the future perfect for actions that will be finished before a certain time in the future, or when you think the first future action will finish before the second future action. Okay? So let's put this into context. Let's put it into an actual example. So the first one says, by 2050, researchers will have found a cure for cancer. So this is our certain time in the future, this year, the year 2050. And this is what we think will have finished before this time. Okay? So that's how we can see the future perfect being applied. Let's see another example. The second one says, by this time next year, I'll have graduated. So we can see another certain time in the future, and we're using future perfect to mention something that's going to be finished in the future before that certain time. Now let's focus more on the second part, the part that says two actions in the future, but one finishing before the other one. So here's our first example. It says, when you arrive tomorrow, we'll have left. I want you guys to analyze both of these actions. Somebody arriving tomorrow and then people leaving. Which one is happening first? Will they actually see each other or will they miss each other? And if you guys say they will not see each other, then you're 100% correct. Why is that? Well, because they won't be there. They'll have left by the time the other person arrives. Okay? Let's check another example out. And this one says, by the time she calls me, I'll have finished my homework. So again, take a second, think about which one is happening first. If your answer is that she's finishing the homework first or that she finished the homework first, then you are 100% correct, sir. So, yeah, this is the perfect way or the perfect example of how to use future perfect. Just having different actions both in the future, but when you want to specify that one is going to finish before the other one. Okay. So let's get let's highlight a little bit before we continue. We have all the future perfects right there. Check out the structure. You might be very, very familiar with it. Why? Because you guys already saw, yes, present perfect. Okay, so it's very, very similar. The only thing is that we're adding an auxiliary. Okay, so let's do another exercise just to make sure that everybody's on the same page as to the explanation of both actions. Okay, so like I mentioned, this is us now. There we go. This is right now. And then imagine two actions in the future. Okay, the first action, let's say it's at 5 p.m. Okay, so this is I will clean my room. This is the action. And then the second action is at 7 p.m. So, and the second action is my mom will get home. So, right off the bat, we automatically know which is happening first. Why? Because we have the time frames. So we know this is at 5 p.m. So 5 p.m. is obviously earlier than 7 p.m. So this is happening first. If we want to join them together, which is the one that we're going to use in future perfect simple? I'll give you a second. If your answer is the one that says 5 p.m., you are 100% correct, sir. Let's go. Let's see. We have the example on the right here. I will have cleaned my room. Yes, we changed this sentence into future perfect. You can see it there. And then we're going to add the other one as our time clause. So there we go. By the time my mom gets home. All right. So we're merging both ideas into one sentence. And you guys can clearly see that we need to add this one in future perfect. We need to change it, right? Now, there's another way of writing this sentence. We can do it like this, or we can do it backwards. By backwards, I mean that we start with the time clause first, and then we do the future perfect tense. The only thing that would change is that if you guys can notice right here, we're adding a comma because we don't have the by to join our two ideas together. Okay, so we need a comma to make sure that these two ideas can work in the same sentence. Okay, so let's get to the structure. For the structure, we're going to use our man Midoriya here just as an example. We must always remember that we need to first set a time clause. So we have by the time school starts. All right, so by the time school starts, here's our first example. Our affirmative example, Midoriya will have finished training. Okay, so I'll take a second to try and work out the actual structure. All right, there we go. Here is the structure underneath. Check if you got it right. If you guys see, it is the same structure for present perfect. The only thing that we're adding right here is will. And you don't have to worry about has. Why? Because since we're using will, we're going to use have for all of the pronouns. Okay, it's not going to change for he, she, and it. As you guys can see, we're using a he, and it's not changing. It's have because you're using will before. Okay, so I think it's a lot easier than present perfect as far as the structure goes. Now think about how we can change this into negative. Take a second. If your answer is, well, teacher, this is obvious, we're only going to add not to will, then you are 100% correct. And here we go. We just add not to will. And in this case, we're going to contract it, and it's going to be won'ts. Okay. If you want to leave it uncontracted, you can. But for space purposes, we contracted it. So there we go. So the only thing that's changing is we're adding not right there. Okay, so here comes, I would say, one of the maybe hardest things when people are talking, at least people are trying to learn the language, but also one of the easiest things if you are a master at the structure game. So remember how we make a normal sentence into a question. I'll give you a second. If your answer is, well, teacher, it's very simple. We just grab the subject and we change places with the auxiliary that you're using. Then you're going to be 100% correct on the money. There we go. As you guys can see, we just did that minor change and now it works. And there we go for the structure. There's one key thing that we must remember about the structure, and that is that we're using the verb in past participle. Okay. So for all the people that struggle with verbs in past participles, and I'm talking about irregular verbs, remember that you need to focus a lot more on the verb list that I gave you. Okay. So take your time with it, practice it, and just double check on the verbs that you're using for your future sentences. Don't just try and guess and guess if it's a regular or an irregular. Do your research, check the verb before you try and spell it out, okay? There's no shame in actually going and doing the research, but make sure that you double check before you just try and guess, okay? So that's it. I just want to remind everybody that we always need to add the time clause. If you don't add this, at least for this tense in particular, it does not sound complete. It does not sound like a correct sentence. If you just go up to somebody and you say, Midoriya will have finished training, that does not sound like a complete idea. All right. So some tenses need more information behind them for them to work. In this case, this is one of those examples. And we're going to need to add more information for the tense to work or for the sentence to work properly. Okay. So let's see a few more examples in the next slide. This is another thing that we always need to, like I just mentioned, keep in mind, right? And that is the importance of having the time clause. And not only just having the time clause, but I don't know if anybody noticed, but all of the time clauses that we were using were in the present tense. So that's something that you guys need to remember. Okay. Let's see some of the examples because maybe you didn't spot it at first. So let's see. By the time school starts, by the time she calls me, let me just get them up, all of them at the same time. the Yeah, there was a mistake there. All right, so we have all of them up there, and we can see clearly that all of these are in the present tense. You guys can see the verb gets, arrive, starts, calls. All right, so the time clauses, even though they're marking like a time in the future, we're going to be using them in the present tense. And then the other part of the idea is going to be the future perfect sentence. Okay, so there we go. Future perfect, future perfect, future perfect, and future perfect. Okay. So that's very important for you guys to remember that we're going to keep it in the present tense and that you always need both of them to be joined together. Okay. So just keep that in mind when you're doing your sentences, when you're building your text, and when you just want to communicate this information. And lastly, do you guys have any questions? Please make sure that you write any questions down so you can ask me in our next session. And also make a mind map and or concept map. If you want to do a concept map uh, instead of a mind map, or if you want to do both, more power to you. Go for it. But remember to take all of the most important information from here, and you must be able to explain the map. Okay. So here are some of the sources. That's going to be it from me. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this video presentation and you learned a bit from it. Remember, I'm still here for you guys. If you have any questions, ask me in the session. Don't be shy. I really appreciate them. And that's going to be it for me. If you liked the video, if you found it to be useful, drop a like. And I'll see you in the next video explanation and also in our classroom. So, you guys take care and peace.